Hi, and welcome to another episode of Emerald Isle Vacation Home Specialist. I am your host, Dennis Richkovsky. Some of you recognize me as the co-owner of Flip Flops Donuts, and some of you know me as your broker of real estate, who specializes in waterfront and waterview properties along the Crystal Coast, especially on Bogue Banks and in my town of Emerald Isle, North Carolina. On this channel, you will find essential information from the inside scoops on buying and selling houses to how to live with the ocean, rivers, and sounds that define the Crystal Coast. Today's episode examines the recent proposal to merge fire and emergency medical service departments in the town of Emerald Isle. Whether you visit here occasionally or live here full-time, getting to know about this merger and the impact it will have on vacationers and residents alike is a story worth telling. Before I begin, please subscribe to my video channel now or at the end of this episode. Recently, the town of Emerald Isle announced that after extensive data analysis by town task forces and town leadership, it will combine its fire and emergency medical service operations into a single department to be known as the Emerald Isle Fire Department. And this merger is effective the first of the new year. Current employees will be trained as both firefighters and EMTs, advanced EMTs, or as paramedics. To quote Bill Walker, the town's fire department chief, by having a single sole fire/EMS department with cross-trained personnel, we anticipate enhanced patient care and emergency call response times, the ability to have a second full-time ambulance available year-round, and a variety of other life-saving improvements. The proposed new fire department will operate 3 shifts that will work 48 hours on and 96 hours off, with staff rotating between the 2 existing fire stations, one in the eastern part of town and one in the western. 8 personnel will be on shift per day, with 4 at each station. Presently, there are 18 members of the existing fire department, and each is certified as a firefighter and basic EMT. There are 8 members of the current EMS department, and it is a blend of EMT basic, EMT advanced, and paramedics. So why the merger? At first blush, it would appear that Emerald Isle needs more full-time employees in EMS. This makes sense for several reasons. First, although the population of Emerald Isle is not growing rapidly, it is getting older. The median age in Emerald Isle is around 56 years of age right now and rising. And adults aged 60 years and older disproportionately use EMS services compared to younger individuals, with older adults expecting to comprise roughly 50% of the town of Emerald Isle population by 2030. Having another ambulance center to respond to in a more timely manner to calls in the eastern half of town makes sense. Second, as Emerald Isle continues to market itself as a vacation resort destination, more and more vacationers will populate the town's beaches during the summer. The number of water rescues increased disproportionately during June, July, and August, so having a second ambulance center to service the eastern half of town in this time-critical event also makes sense. A third reason is rather obvious too. There are far fewer fires in Emerald Isle than there were in the past. Building materials are less combustible. Buildings are designed with fire safety in mind, and buildings are laid out to deter the spread of fire. Fewer fires means fewer firefighters. One solution is to lay off a bunch of firefighters and cut down on the budget for the fire department. Residents of Emerald Isle would embrace the tax savings wholeheartedly. But even the resident bean counters recognize that fires still happen, and when they do, they can cause severe property damage and threaten people's lives. So, it doesn't make much sense to cut the fire department. But what also doesn't make sense is the merging of the fire and emergency medical service departments. To be sure, individuals in both professions get up every morning prepared to save people. But they save people in very different ways. And they receive very different training. Firefighters are trained not only to put out fires, but they are motivated to put out fires. It's what they do. It's in their DNA. What's not in their DNA is driving an ambulance and providing medical care. EMS personnel are trained not only to provide medical assistance and transport, but they are motivated to provide this medical care. It's in their DNA. What's not in their DNA is putting out fires. Now, Fire Chief Bill Walker says that all personnel will be cross-trained by July 2023. That's easy to say in a press release. What I want to know is whether all current personnel were asked their opinion on this proposed merger. It's one thing to start a cross-trained or merged fire/EMS department from scratch. It's quite another to blend two dissimilar professional groups, i.e. fire and EMS, into one. But as town manager Matt Zapp put it, joining the departments and cross-training staff will provide a cost avoidance of $250,000 a year. As a tax-paying resident of Emerald Isle, I hope Matt Zapp and Bill Walker are right. But history and my experience with the merger of police and fire departments in Durham in the 1970s suggests otherwise. First, public safety consolidation can be costly, what with higher wages and higher cross-training expenses. The proposed shifts, working 48 hours on, 96 hours off, with staff rotating between the two existing fire stations, one in the eastern part of town and one in the west, may very well endanger teamwork and lead to lower morale and higher turnover, especially among firefighters. Firefighting requires closely coordinated teamwork that engenders cooperation and trust. It is for these very reasons that fire companies train, live, and work together on a daily basis. Then there is the confusion and conflict that will arise when personnel are constantly switching from firefighting to providing medical assistance. This confusion may result in delays in responses that could result in loss of property and life. Insurance rates could then increase, and Emerald Isle residents wouldn't stand for that outcome. And are there enough hours in the day for an individual to be properly trained in two decidedly different professions? I don't think so. Teamwork and training may not be enough to eliminate the conflicts that may very well erupt between fire-oriented and EMS-oriented personnel. After all, firefighters focus on mechanical and technical aspects of rescue, while EMS personnel deal with psychological and personal issues primarily. In the end, if this merger does go through, I fear that most, if not all, of the current fire and EMS personnel will leave. That's too bad, as I count several firefighters and EMS personnel among my friends. To be sure, I hope I am wrong. But if not, then the town will be faced with hiring specific, cross-trained individuals who will rightly demand significantly higher wages. So much for that cost avoidance of $250,000 a year that Matt Zapp is talking about. To stay informed about what is going on in Emerald Isle and the Crystal Coast, please subscribe to my newsletter by texting your email address to 919-308-2292, or sign up for my blog on my website, www.eihomesforsale.com, and do subscribe to Emerald Isle Vacation Home Specialist on YouTube at the end of this episode. Stay well and stay safe, so come on down. Please subscribe to my channel below, and definitely return next week to the same bat channel at the same bat time of 9 a.m. on Thursday for another episode of Emerald Isle Vacation Home Specialist.